Hello, my name is Jess and welcome to my channel Reads with a Ravenclaw. This chat is so much fun, I should film here more often. So today I'm going to be pre-filming a few videos because on Saturday I move out to go to university and I don't know when I'm going to get the chance to film because I don't want to be that weird girl that sits in her room on her own and just talks to herself, because like that's not the first impression that I want to give. The next few videos, if you see me wearing this face and this outfit with this background, that is why. Nice little segue. Today I thought I would bring you a university related video by doing a university book haul. I mentioned before in passing that I'm going to be studying English literature and Spanish at university, and that essentially means that I've just gone out and spent a crap ton of money on fiction books, on textbooks that I am going to be studying over the course of this year. If you're well acquainted with BookTube, a lot of you have probably heard of the Reading Bukowski, which is a well-known BookTube channel, and she did an English degree, and before the start of every semester she would do like a university-based book haul, and I just found them so interesting as somebody who was looking to study English literature at university. So that's sort of what I'm trying to do here today, to just sort of give you a taste of the university reading list and yeah, see what you think of it. So I've got a lot of books here to get through. It's going to be a long video, so I apologise in advance, but let's just get in with all the books that I'm going to be reading this year. The first book I have here to show you is The Secret Agent by Joseph Conrad, which I've just finished reading as it's one of the books that I have to read before term starts. This book is set in the early 1900s and it follows a man called Mr. Verloc, who is an anarchist. He is essentially tasked with carrying out an act of terrorism against the Greenwich Observatory to catch the attention of the British public, but when this terrorist act doesn't go to plan, everything just sort of spirals downhill and you see him trying to cope with it. This book is also partially based on true events. There was a French anarchist who prematurely exploded a bomb that it was believed was intended for somewhere in Greenwich, and Joseph Conrad sort of took inspiration from that to create this. This book just gets me super excited to study literature at university because the sort of central theme of it is terrorism, and I think that sort of shows that this is a course that's really interested in responding to just the real world climate at the moment, where we're having all of these horrifying things happening in the news, horrifying acts of terrorism, and it just really excites me that rather than just follow the traditional literary canon, the university that I'm going to is also interested in looking at the media in light of real world events that are going on. I think it's going to be super interesting to study and I can't wait for this one. The next book is another one that I've already read, and it is Lady Susan by Jane Austen. If you don't already know, I'm a massive Jane Austen fan. I've read 3 of her books. I've read Pride and Prejudice, Persuasion and Emma, and all of them are just great and witty and sarcastic and wonderful. I didn't enjoy this one quite as much. It was written, it wasn't published, it was written when Jane Austen was 20, so before she'd really got her flow going as an author. Is that how you say it? I feel like I've just made it sound like Jane Austen is a rapper, like with her flow going. But yeah, it was written before she was published. She was very young. I think she was only about 20 when she wrote this. And I really think you can tell. It's a story told in letters. It's an epistolary novel, epistolary. I'm never quite sure of the pronunciation of the word. And I just feel like the form that she later adapts is maybe better suited to her writing style, although I'm no literary critic. I really don't know what I'm talking about. That's why I'm going to university. So this is more of a personal opinion than a learned opinion. But this essentially follows the life and times of Lady Susan, who is dubbed the most famous coquette in England, who goes to stay with her brother-in-law and sister-in-law after she's kind of been part of this London scandal for flirting with a married man. It was definitely fun. I do think you can already like see Jane Austen's talent and gift for shaping really witty characters, for kind of getting into social commentary. I didn't think, like I said, it was quite as strong as her later works, but I still think this is going to be super fun to study. Next up we have a non-fiction book called The Stories of English by David Crystal. This was one taken for a language for literature module that I have to sit as one of my core modules, and I'm not entirely sure what this is about, so I'm just going to read the blurb to you. How did a language originally spoken by a few thousand Anglo-Saxons become one used by more than 1,500 million people? How have all the different versions of English evolved and changed? In this compelling global tour, David Crystal turns the history of language on its head and tells the real stories of English that have never been fully told. This essentially sounds like it's a history of the English language, which sounds super entertaining. The other half of my course, because I'm a joint honours student, is Spanish, and I'm just really interested in languages and the history of language and how the world is just full of so many unique and interesting dialects and languages, so this is a book that will really interest me. I'm not really an English language student because just things like grammar structures aren't the most interesting to me, but it sounds like this kind of takes like a historical approach to it, which is something that I'm super interested in. Next up, an English literature course would probably not be complete without some Shakespeare, so I will be reading The Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. I've only ever read 2 other Shakespeare plays, both of which were for school, and those were Romeo and Juliet and Othello, both of which were tragedies. I don't believe that this is a tragedy, and I know that it also has some more fantastical elements to it than the other 2, so I'm super interested to read this because currently all of my knowledge from Midsummer Night's Dream rests on that one episode of The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody where they put on the play. So yeah, I don't know much about this outside of that, and I probably should, so I'm really interested to read it. Next up, we have the Township Plays by Ethel Fugard. Again, this is one that I'm not too sure what it's about, so I will just read some of the blurb for you. The 5 plays collected here offer a unique insight into the role of theatre in a situation of oppression. They were produced in close collaboration with their original black amateur casts, drawing on their lives and everyday experiences in townships. This is another piece of literature, another set of plays, which makes me super excited about the course I'm studying, because at A-level English literature, which is, I'm going to be making a video about that soon as well, it was a really undiverse kind of reading list, and so I'm really excited to be reading something that is interested in covering, you know, real world films, real world themes, real world issues, and looking into including more diverse literatures in the course itself, because I don't know, I don't think English literature courses do anybody any favours when they just kind of offer this narrow-minded outlook of literature, this narrow-minded, white, straight outlook of literature. I've honestly never really studied books through the lens of oppression and race and diversity. I did a little bit with Othello, but that was written in the 1600s by a white guy who had a lot of, like, you know, ingrained racism going on, so it will be really interesting to read from this and to learn more about it, and I'm super excited. Next up, we have what will be the oldest piece of literature that I've ever read, and that is Antigone by Sophocles. Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed, I can't even speak. So this is a Greek tragic play about a woman called Antigone who rebels against this sort of rule set down by the leader of, I think it's Athens in the play, by burying her brother even though he's a traitor or something along those lines. I'm not too sure. I haven't done that much research into this yet. I'm super intimidated by this because the oldest thing that I've ever read is by Chaucer, again for school, so I've never read anything from the ancient Greek, and I'll be super interested to because it's just, like, you know, such a foundation in terms of drama, so yes. Next up we have the book that I'm probably maybe not the most excited about, but it's definitely like up there, and that is Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys. I don't know if I've mentioned this specifically on this channel before, but whenever anybody asks me what my favourite book of all time is, I kind of always gravitate towards Jane Eyre, and this is inspired by Jane Eyre. It follows the story of the woman in the attic, Bertha Rochester, from childhood, and I'm super interested in this kind of stereotype of the mad woman in the attic. I actually wrote an extended essay on it for a separate qualification called an EPQ whilst I was in college, and so Bertha Rochester is a figure that really interests me because there's so much that is unsaid about her, so much left unsaid, so much that we don't know, so much that relies on very damaging stereotypes of the time. As much as I love Jane Eyre, I do think that Charlotte Bronte does not show Bertha Rochester in a forgiving light at all. Some people have argued that she's quite a feminist character, but this isn't something that I personally see, but I'm hoping that I do see that with this book, and I can't wait to read it. It's so short and I have a feeling it's going to pack a real punch, so I'm super excited. Next up we have Slaughterhouse V by Kurt Vonnegut. It's kind of embarrassing to admit, but I don't actually know that much about this one either. I know it centres on the main character, Billy Pilgrim. I know it's set during the Second World War in some sort of war camp, but other than that I don't know very much. I always get it confused with Catch-22. But yeah, I'm really excited to read this because, like I said, it's a book that I've heard a lot about but never really picked up myself, so yes. Next up we have another set of plays, and that is Blue Heart by Carol Churchill. So I'm just going to read the short summaries of the two plays that are included in this on the back. So the first one is a play called Heart's Desire, which sees a family awaiting their daughter's return from Australia. Though in a series of alternative scenarios, the play collapses as it keeps veering off in unexpected and ridiculous directions. And the second play, which is the one that definitely sounds the most interesting and gripping to me, is called Blue Cattle, and it tells the story of the con man Derek and the 5 women he misleads into believing he is their biological son. Try as he might, Derek's plans are scuppered as the play is invaded by a virus. And this book says that she has a very inventive style that pulls apart language and structure in a way that truthfully explores family and relationships. And I don't know if I've mentioned this before on this channel, I think I probably have. I adore seeing family dynamics play out. I really love it when that's just a theme that is heavily explored in books, in literature, and I'm really excited to read this as well. I do love reading plays, but I don't read very many plays, and this just sounds like right up my alley, so can't wait for this one. Next up, we have a theory book, and that is Beginning Theory by Peter Barry. This was not a core text, but it was a recommended text, and I had seen this recommended on both the Reading Bukowski's channel and on Just Kiss My Frog, and both of them like raved about this as a starting point for literary theory. I've had a flick through it, and essentially what it seems to be is just an overview of the different types of literary criticism. I haven't been very heavily exposed to literary criticism. We kind of touched on aspects of it at A level, but we did nothing like very detailed at all, and this just seems like a really good introduction. It says an introduction to literary and cultural theory, and because of all the great stuff I've heard about it, I just thought that it would be a really useful thing to pick up and to take with me. Next up is a book that I'm actually dreading reading, and I rarely dread reading books, but I do dread reading this, and that is Dolly by Susan Hill. Susan Hill, if you feel like you recognise the name, is the author of The Women in Black, and just look how terrifying this cover is. That's terrifying. So, orphan Edward Cayley is sent to spend the summer with his forbidding Aunt Kestrel at Ayot Loch, her decaying house deep in the damp, lonely fens. With him is his spoilt, spiteful cousin Leonora, and when Leonora's birthday wish for a beautiful doll is thwarted, she unleashes a furious rage which haunts her quiet, subdued cousin for years afterwards. Shit. I've never shared this on this channel because I've never had reason to share it, but I hate horror films, horror books, anything that scares me. I'm very easily scared. I'm such a wimp with things like this. I just can't do it. I'm absolutely terrified of reading this. Having said that, I do think it's really cool that they've included a horror book in a literature course, because I don't think that doesn't sound like something that happens very often. It's definitely not a genre that I feel is taken as seriously as often, so it could be really interesting or really scary, or both. Next up, we have another very old play, and that is, well, 2 plays, Everyman and Mankind, and I don't think the author of this is known, but it's edited by Douglas Brewster and Eric Rasmussen. I've done very little research into these, but I believe, based from the synopsis and from the title, that it's a morality play, and the everyman therefore refers to that figure of the everyman, which is meant to represent mankind, humankind in plays. I've never read a morality play. I've kind of touched on it because there are theories with Othello, which is one of the texts that I studied at A level, being an everyman figure. But yeah, this would be super interesting. They've chosen some very interesting plays and dramas on this reading list that I'm really looking forward to studying. And the final text I have here to show you is really heavy, so I'm not going to hold it up for the whole time. And that is the Norton Anthology of Poetry, 5th edition. This is really hurting my wrist, I'm going to put this down. According to this, it has 1,828 poems by 334 poets. This is going to weigh my car down when I'm going to university. So yes, those are all of the books that I have bought so far. I'm aware there is only English literature on this list, but I haven't actually been sent any Spanish literature that I have to read. I've been sent a Spanish film. I will let you know how I get on with them. Let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought of them, especially Dolly, because I need to know on a scale of 1 to 10 how scared I'm going to be and how little sleep I'm going to get after reading it. But until next time, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.